we've got our sleeve in place, and I'm really happy with that. It looks nice and neat, and the gathering is lovely and even, so that's really good. Like I said before, the pattern does suggest that you sew it twice. Now, what I'd like us to do is to turn it inside out like that, so we then put that bit on the outside, okay, on the outside of your garment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to zigzag into the seam allowance here. Because clearly what we've got a lovely neat seam here, but we haven't got a neat seam here, and this is going to fray, and it's too big, and it's just generally just not great. So obviously whenever we have a raw edge on the inside of the garment, we either need to overlock it, which is using an overlocking machine, or we need to zigzag it so that it doesn't fray into our stitch and become weak. So what we're aiming for is we're going to zigzag in the seam allowance, and it can go over a little bit into this excess sleeve, and it might be that it's so tiny where you've sewn it, like mine. That doesn't matter as long as it's attached, because the rest of it should hold it in place anyway, and the zigzag will just help to hold that in place and make it more secure. And then any excess material that's really big, we're just going to trim that back like this, for example. Again, not too close to there, but just so it's neatened off a little bit and a bit smaller. Okay, so we're going to do the same on the other side. So you need to be looking at the lining side. We'll start at the bottom. And just make sure that it's properly folded over, so we're not going to sew into that by accident. Now, Mr. Cameraman, if you can just make a note please of the settings that were on this machine. We've got it on C for zigzag. Our length of our stitch is between 1 and 2, and our width is about sort of 2.5, 3. Okay, so when you put it under your presser foot here, use the wheel on the side just to double check where it's going to sew, so that you know that you're sewing in the right place, like this. That looks pretty good to me. Okay, and then we can go again. We're just double check that you're not sewing through bits you shouldn't be sewing through. Okay, and that just gives us our lovely professional finish, which is what we're looking for, good quality. And then give it a trim if you feel it needs it, which I think mine does. Not massively close, but close enough that it's not. And obviously at this stage you can get rid of any excess threads as well that you've not trimmed. So that's that from that side, and that's quite nice. It's good. Just turn it the right around. Okay. So there we go. Now we're ready to make our skirt to go on the bottom. Okay, so our next task is to begin our skirt. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to stitch the skirt back together at the centre, leaving open above the large circle. So, if you remember from our pattern piece, we've got this little notch here, this little mark here, and that is where we're going to stop our sewing. So we're going to leave a gap that's going to attach onto the bodice, and that's where our zip is going to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch all the way down. I've already pinned it in place, so we're ready. We're just going to stitch from that point down to the bottom, obviously with our seam allowance, and then we're going to stitch the front onto the back. So we're ready to do that. Alright, so are we ready? Okay, so starting from that mark where the bottom of our zip is going to be, I'm not starting at the top of the material, making sure that your edge is lined up, 1.5 centimetres away from the edge. And straight seam. Okay, so this is our centre back seam that we've just done. We're going to now put that face down on top of the front, and obviously the right sides have to be together again like they were before, and what we're going to do is we're just going to sew all the way down from the top right the way to the bottom with our 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. I think I've pinned it on this side already, I have. Yep, so we'll do that side first. And same on the other side. Okay, so where we have stopped for the top of for the bottom of our zip, just sort of so it's open there, we need to clip this, okay, and if we have a close-up of this instruction here, we're just going to cut a little triangle in that meets that seam. Okay, so like that, take that out, and that's because we're going to fold this back on itself, and that's going to help us when we put our zip in afterwards.